They called it the last great American fairy tale. On one side, you had the barbarian, the Austrian Oak, a man who sculpted his own destiny out of iron and willpower, forcing the world to look at him until it had no choice but to applaud. On the other side, you had the royalty, Maria Shriver, the Kennedy, the bloodline of American kings. When they stood together, they didn't just look like a couple, they looked like an alliance, a merger of pure, brute ambition and refined political dynasty. They were untouchable. They smiled for the magazines in Brentwood. They raised 4 beautiful children in a mansion that looked like a fortress. When Arnold ran for governor of California, when the Terminator became the governator, Maria was the shield that protected him. When the groping allegations surfaced in 2003, days before the election, it was Maria who stood by his side, her eyes clear, her voice steady, telling the world that this man was a good man, that he was a champion. But while the cameras were flashing and the world was buying into the dream, something else was growing in the shadows of that Pacific Palisades mansion. A secret, a lie so massive, so brazen, and so incredibly reckless that it defies logic. We aren't talking about a one-night stand in a Motel 6 on the road. We aren't talking about a whispered rumor with a co-star in a trailer. We are talking about the woman who washed their clothes, the woman who cooked their meals, the woman who lived under their roof, walking the same halls as Maria Shriver, smiling at her, serving her coffee, while carrying the husband's child in her womb. This is the story of the disintegration of the Schwarzenegger empire. This is Chapter 1, The Ghost in the House. You have to understand the arrogance required to pull this off. Arnold wasn't just a movie star. He was a master of image construction. He built his body perfection. He built his career perfection. And he built his public persona to be bulletproof. But in 1996, the armor cracked. Maria was away. The house was quiet. And Mildred Baena, Patty, as they called her, was there. She had been with the family for years. She was trusted. She was invisible in a way that help is often invisible to the wealthy elites. She was part of the furniture. And in the guest house of that sprawling estate, the king of Hollywood crossed a line that would eventually detonate a nuclear bomb in the middle of his life. He slept with a housekeeper. Now, in the locker rooms of Venice Beach, guys talk. They talk about needs and urges and the high testosterone lifestyle of the elite bodybuilder. But this wasn't just about sex. This was about hubris. Arnold thought he could control reality. He thought he could script his life like a movie where the hero never faces the consequences. 9 months later, 2 children were born within days of each other. Christopher, born to Maria Shriver, and Joseph, born to Mildred Baena. Imagine the scene. Arnold is holding his legitimate son, the heir to the Kennedy Schwarzenegger throne. And somewhere in the same orbit, perhaps in the same house, the housekeeper is holding a boy who shares the exact same blood, the exact same DNA. For years, Arnold claimed he didn't know. He told himself it was the husband's kid, Rogelio Baena. He convinced himself that the math didn't add up, that it was just a fling, a mistake that would fade into the background noise of a chaotic life. But genetics don't lie. And as the years ticked by, the boy, Joseph, started to change. He didn't just grow up. He grew into an image. The jawline, the heavy brow, the thick, dense muscle structure. As Joseph ran to the halls of the Schwarzenegger mansion, playing with Arnold's other children, the ghost of the truth began to manifest in flesh and bone. Every time Arnold looked at the kid, he saw it. He saw himself staring back. Listen to me closely. We are peeling back the skin of the fitness industry's biggest idol. We are exposing the secrets they try to bury under magazine covers and posing trunks. If you want the raw truth, the stories that the networks are too scared to tell, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Do not let these stories die in the dark. Join the Iron Files. The lie lasted for 14 years. 14 years of Christmas parties where the secret son was in the family photos. 14 years of Maria Shriver treating Mildred like a sister, unaware that the woman she trusted had betrayed her in the most intimate way possible. It wasn't until Arnold left the governor's office in 2011 that the walls finally came down. The political protection was gone. The distractions of running a state were over. And the resemblance was now undeniable. Joseph was a teenager, and he looked more like Arnold than some of Arnold's legitimate children did. The whispers in the household staff had turned into a roar. Maria knew something was wrong. She had that Kennedy intuition, a family that knows a thing or two about infidelity and secrets. She waited, she watched, and finally, she cornered Mildred. It wasn't a screaming match. It was a cold, hard confrontation in the sanctity of that Brentwood home. Maria asked a question that had been haunting the halls. Is he Arnold's? Mildred broke. She fell to her knees. She confessed everything. And in that moment, the power couple ceased to exist. The fairy tale dissolved into acid. Arnold wasn't the hero anymore. He was a man who had kept a second family hidden in plain sight, humiliating the woman who had offended him against the world. But this was only the beginning of the fall. Because once the Maid Scandal broke, the floodgates opened. The open marriage rumors, the sex contracts, the other women, it was all about to come spilling out onto the pavement. We are just getting started. In the next chapter, we're going to dig into the confrontation itself, the media firestorm that followed, and the bizarre, twisted reality of Arnold's double life during his time as governor. The king is dead. Long live the scandal. The explosion didn't happen with a bang. It happened in a quiet room with beige walls, soft carpeting, and a marriage counselor sitting between two titans. It was January 2011. Arnold had just stepped down as governor. The high of political power was fading, and the reality of his domestic life was coming into sharp focus. Maria Shriver had been waiting. She hadn't screamed when she found out from the housekeeper. She hadn't thrown vases. She had gathered her intel like a prosecutor building a RICO case. They sat down for a counseling session. Arnold thought it was routine maintenance for a high-profile marriage that had endured decades of spotlight stress. He was wrong. The therapist looked at the Terminator and dropped the guillotine. Maria came here today to ask about a child, the therapist said. She wants to know if you fathered a child with your housekeeper Mildred. For a split second, the world stopped spinning. This was the moment Arnold had been outrunning for 14 years. He looked at Maria. He saw the devastation in her eyes, the absolute betrayal of a woman who had offended him against groping charges, political smear campaigns, and the relentless Hollywood press. He could have lied. He could have denied it again. But the game was over. It's true, he said. 2 words. And just like that, the Kennedy-Schwarzenegger alliance was incinerated. But here is where the story gets darker. Because we need to talk about the mechanics of the lie. You don't hide a secret son for a decade and a half just by being lucky. You do it with money, manipulation, and a terrifying level of compartmentalization. Arnold wasn't just sleeping with the housekeeper. He was funding her life, but keeping her close enough to control. When Mildred was pregnant, she was working in the house, while Maria was pregnant with Christopher. Arnold was watching both bellies grow. Think about the psychological disconnect required to witness that. He bought Mildred a house, a nice house, in Bakersfield, about 2 hours away from the Brentwood mansion. $65,000 for a down payment. Cash. No paper trail that Maria would easily see. He kept Mildred on the payroll. He kept her in his orbit. Why? Because the safest place to hide a smoking gun is in your own pocket. If he fired her, she talks. If he sends her away, the tabloids find her. So he kept her close. He let his illegitimate son play with his legitimate children. He watched Joseph grow up in the shadow of his own ego. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. The rumor that refuses to die. The open marriage theory. For years, people in the industry whispered that Arnold and Maria had an arrangement, that she knew he was a European man with European appetites, that as long as he didn't embarrass the family, what happened on the road stayed on the road. We know Arnold had a history. We know about the flings on Venice Beach in the 70s. We know about the orgies whispered about in the Gold's Gym era. We know about the groupies. But a child? A child is not a fling. A child is a legacy. If there was an arrangement, Arnold broke the cardinal rule. Don't bring it home. Don't make it permanent. Don't create a scandal that humiliates a Kennedy. He didn't just cheat on his wife. He created a parallel life. And that is the ultimate betrayal. He stole Maria's right to reality. For 14 years, she lived in a play, unaware that the stagehand were laughing at her. We are exposing the machinery behind the idols, the hush money, the fake smiles, the destroyed families. If you want the truth that the mainstream media is too polite to tell you, you need to subscribe right now. Hit that button. Join the investigation. Do not let them sweep this under the rug. Let's go back to the fallout. When the news broke in May 2011, the media didn't just cover it, they feasted on it. It was the biggest scandal since O.J. Simpson. The Los Angeles Times broke the story, and suddenly, the governor of the people was the sperminator. The memes were brutal. The late-night hosts were ruthless. But behind the jokes, there was a tragedy. Patrick and Christopher, Arnold's sons, were devastated. Catherine and Christina, his daughters, were humiliated. They changed their last names on social media. They distanced themselves. The family unit that Arnold had prided himself on, the perfect image of the American dream, was shattered into a million pieces. And how did Arnold react? Did he hide? Did he crumble? No. He did what a bodybuilder does. He tried to pose his way out of it. He wrote a book, Total Recall. He went on 60 Minutes. He tried to control the narrative. He admitted fault, yes, but there was a strange attachment to it. He spoke about the affair like it was a bad business deal, a strategic error rather than a moral catastrophe. He claimed he didn't know Joseph was his until the boy was about 7 or 8 years old. I just looked at him and it didn't match up, he said. But once he knew, he didn't confess. He locked it down. He continued the charade for 7 more years. 7 years of looking his wife in the eye and lying by omission every single day. But the Maid Scandal wasn't the only skeleton in the closet. It was just the one that broke the door down. Once the door was open, people started looking at the other rumors, the behavior on movie sets, the aggressive interactions with women during the bodybuilding days. The Groping Gate scandal of 2003 was revisited. 6 women had come forward accusing him of humiliation and unwanted touching. Back then, Maria saved him. She went on Oprah and vouched for his character. She secured him the governorship. Now, in 2011, realizing she had offended a man who was sleeping with their housekeeper the entire time, that is a level of pain that money cannot fix. That is a scar that never heals. In Chapter 3, we're going to leave the mansion and go back to the beginning. We need to understand why Arnold is this way. We're going back to the Gold's Gym era, the steroids, the women of the 70s, the ruthless mentality that said, I can take whatever I want. The maid wasn't an accident. She was the inevitable result of a life lived without boundaries. To understand the maid in the mansion, you have to understand the meathead in the dungeon. We need to go back. Before the governorship, before the blockbuster movies, before the Kennedy wedding. We need to go back to the sweat and the stench of Venice Beach in the 1970s. This is where the monster was fed. When Arnold arrived in America, he wasn't just hungry for titles. He was starving for conquest. And in the golden era of bodybuilding, Gold's Gym wasn't just a place to train. It was a hunting ground. The stories from those days are legendary, but they aren't the kind of legends you tell your kids. They talk about the gym bunnies. Women who would line up outside the back door of Gold's, waiting for the Titans to finish their sets. Arnold was the king of the pride, and he took whatever he wanted. He was open about it then. In interviews from that era, interviews his PR team tried to scrub later, he talked about sex as a bodily function. He compared it to doing a set of bench presses. It was a release. It was physical. There was no romance, no connection, just conquest. He treated women exactly like he treated the weights. Object to be lifted, used to pump up his ego, and then racked when he was finished. You have to look at the psychology here. When you spend 20 years staring at yourself in a mirror, worshipping your own reflection, you develop a level of narcissism that is dangerous. You start to believe you are a god. And gods don't have to follow the rules of mortal men. He was living a life of absolute hedonism. There were rumors of orgies in Santa Monica apartments. Stories of women being passed around like protein shakes. It was the 70s, the era of free love. But for Arnold, it was the era of free taking. We are digging up the roots of the behavior that destroyed a dynasty. The mainstream media wants you to remember the hero. We are showing you the predator. If you want the unvarnished history of the fitness industry, you need to subscribe right now. Don't let the PR teams win. Hit the button. He carried this mentality straight into his relationship with Maria. Think about it. He goes from a world where women are disposable accessories to marrying into the most prestigious Catholic, traditional political family in America. Did people really think he changed? Did they really think a ring on his finger would stop the Austrian Oak from seeking out new conquests? It was a ticking time bomb. The Gropegate accusations that surfaced in 2003, where 6 women accused him of humiliating them, grabbing them without consent, weren't anomalies. They were flashbacks. They were the behavior of the 1970s Gold's gym locker room, leaking into the corporate world of the 1990s and 2000s. He didn't stumble into the maid's bed by accident. He ended up there because for 40 years, he trained himself to believe that his desires were the only thing that mattered. He was the star of the movie. Everyone else was just an extra. In the gym, cheating on a rep means you don't grow. In life, cheating on your wife means you destroy your family. Arnold forgot the difference. In the next chapter, we're going to look at the cover-up, the political machine, how the governor managed to keep the biggest secret in Hollywood while running the state of California, and the open marriage rumors that shielded him from the truth. The weights are racked. The damage is done. November 2003. The balloons are dropping. The confetti is flying. And Arnold Schwarzenegger is standing on a stage in Sacramento, grinning that $1 million movie star grin. He has just done the impossible. He has terminated the political establishment. He is the governor of California. But look closer at the footage. Look at the woman standing next to him. Maria Shriver. She is smiling. She is waving, but she is also doing something else. She is holding up a wall. Days before this victory, the Los Angeles Times dropped a bombshell that should have ended his career. Gropegate. 6 women came forward. They told stories of humiliation. They said Arnold grabbed them, pulled them onto his lap, and treated them like props on a movie set. The allegations were detailed. They were ugly. In any other timeline, this kills the campaign. But Arnold had the ultimate weapon, a Kennedy. Maria went on Oprah. She looked into the camera, and she vouchsafed his soul. She told the women of America that her husband was a work in progress. She told them he was a good man with a good heart. She used her family's sterling reputation to scrub the stain off his. And it worked. The voters bought it. They elected the governor. But here is the twisted irony that makes your stomach turn. While Maria was defending him against allegations of groping strangers, the real bomb was already ticking in her own backyard. Joseph, the secret son, was 6 years old when Arnold took the oath of office. Think about the compartmentalization. Arnold is sitting in the governor's mansion, signing bills, declaring states of emergency, and running the 7th largest economy in the world. And every time he goes home to Brentwood, he sees the housekeeper. He sees the boy. He watched that boy grow up for the entire duration of his 2 terms. 2003 to 2011, the boy is getting bigger. The face is getting more familiar. And Arnold is shaking hands with world leaders, knowing that if one person, just one person, connects the dots, the entire administration collapses. This fuels the open marriage theory. For decades, Hollywood insiders whispered that Arnold and Maria had a European arrangement. The rumor was simple. Maria knew who she married. She knew he was an alpha male with an appetite that couldn't be satisfied by domestic life. The theory went that as long as he was discreet, as long as he came home to her, she would look the other way. It's the only way some people can make sense of it. How could a woman as smart as Maria Shriver, an award-winning journalist, not know? How could she miss the hushed conversations? The disappearing ex? The housekeeper's son, looking more like a Schwarzenegger every single day? Maybe she didn't want to know. Maybe the power was too intoxicating. Or maybe, just maybe, Arnold is the greatest actor who ever lived. Not on screen, but in his living room. We are exposing the lies that power is built on. If you want to know what really happens behind the closed doors of the elite, you need to subscribe right now. The mainstream media protects these guys. We expose them. Hit that button and join the files. Let's get back to the governor. The arrogance of his time in office wasn't just political. It was personal. He was commuting sentences for his friends' sons. He was flying back and forth in private jets while preaching about the environment. He was living a life above the law because he believed he was the law. But biology is the one law you can't veto. By 2010, as his final term was winding down, the resemblance was screaming. Joseph wasn't a cute kid anymore. He was a young man with a heavy brow and a jaw of granite. The whispers in the staff were becoming shouts. The security detail, the California Highway Patrol officers assigned to protect him, they had to know. You think the guys who drive the governor don't know where he goes? Don't know who he sees? Of course they knew. But the code of silence in Arnold's circle is stronger than Omerta. The open marriage myth falls apart when you look at the end. If they had an arrangement, why did Maria leave? Why did she file for divorce? Because an arrangement usually implies rules. And the number one rule is no embarrassments, no other families, no threats to the legacy. Arnold didn't just break the vow of fidelity. He broke the contract of their partnership. He created a permanent reminder of his betrayal, a living, breathing testament to the fact that he valued his own needs over his wife's dignity. When he left office in January 2011, he probably thought he had made it. He had survived 2 terms without the secret coming out. He was free. He was ready to go back to Hollywood, make movies, and be the king again. But the bill was due, and Maria was ready to collect. In the final chapter, we look at the wreckage, the divorce, the relationship with Joseph today, and the ultimate question, did Arnold Schwarzenegger ever actually regret it? Or is he just sorry he got caught? The divorce didn't end in a courtroom battle with screaming lawyers. It ended in a slow, agonizing suffocation that lasted 10 years. From 2011, when Maria Shriver first filed the papers, to December 2021, when the stamp finally hit the document, the Schwarzenegger empire was being dissected piece by piece. We are talking about $400 million. Real estate, movie royalties, investments, art, every single asset had to be split down the middle. But you can't split a legacy. You can't negotiate the damage done to a family name. When the dust finally settled, Arnold was left in the Brentwood mansion. He had his tank in the driveway. He had his donkeys in the backyard. He had his cigars. But the house was different. The Camelot energy of the Kennedy era was gone. Now, let's look at the reality of the family dynamic today. This is the part the glossy magazines try to ignore. On one side, you have the legitimate 4, Catherine, Christina, Patrick, and Christopher. They rallied around their mother. They are a tight unit. They go to the premieres. They support the projects. But there's a line in the sand they refuse to cross. On the other side, you have Joseph Baena. Joseph is the one who looks like him. Joseph is the one who lives like him. Go to Gold's Gym in Venice today, and you might see them. Arnold, the aging lion, training the young cub. They pump iron together. They recreate the classic poses. Joseph is following the footsteps, building a career in acting and real estate, embracing the Baena name while wearing the Schwarzenegger genetics like a suit of armor. But watch the red carpets carefully. At the premiere of Arnold's show Fubar, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The 4 legitimate children walked the carpet. They took photos. They smiled. Joseph walked the carpet too, alone. They didn't pose together. They don't follow each other on social media. Arnold has managed to build a relationship with Joseph. Yes, he loves the kid. He's proud of him. He has said publicly, I don't want Joseph to feel like he is a mistake. But he failed to blend the families. The betrayal was too deep. For the Shriver-Schwarzenegger kids, Joseph isn't just a half-brother. He is a living, breathing reminder of the day their world fell apart. He is the symbol of the lie. So, where does that leave the king? Arnold is in his late 70s now. He's had multiple heart surgeries. He's faced his mortality. When interviewers ask him if he regrets the affair, he gives a very specific answer. He says it was stupid. He says it was a failure. He admits he caused pain. But listen to the tone. It's clinical. It's detached. It's the analysis of a man who looks at his life like a chessboard. He made a bad move. He lost a queen. But he's still in the game. He doesn't wallow in guilt. He doesn't beg for forgiveness. He just keeps moving forward, rep after rep, set after set, refusing to let the weight crush him. And maybe that is the ultimate tragedy of Arnold Schwarzenegger. The drive that made him the greatest bodybuilder in history. The ability to shut off his emotions, to ignore the pain, to focus only on the goal, is the exact same trait that allowed him to live a double life for 14 years. He conquered the world. He conquered Hollywood. He conquered politics. But in the end, he couldn't conquer his own nature. The statue has a crack in it. And no matter how much you polish the bronze, the crack remains. This has been the Iron Files. We dug for the truth, and we found the bodies. We're the only channel brave enough to tell these stories. If you want the raw, unfiltered history of the fitness industry, you need to support this mission. Subscribe to the channel right now. Like this video to help us beat the algorithm. Share this with a friend who thinks they know the truth. And comment below. Do you think Arnold's legacy is ruined, or does the legend outweigh the lies? I'm Dante Rourke. I'll see you in the next investigation.